Well, everybody, welcome today to the channel. We're talking with Brown Hat Bakery. You've agreed to come in and meet with us on this extremely hot day.
Yeah,
I'm sweating, we're sweating. It's just a hot day today. But
yeah, Alabama summer.
Alabama summer, can't beat it. But you brought along some good products today to show us and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so my name's William Conklin, or you can Todd as well. That's what a lot of my friends' family call me and everything. But I've been professionally baking for about almost a decade now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so about a year I branched out and decided to take the leap, and I've been building my own business. And a few of the products that I have today, where I got my start actually, is sourdough breads. That's where I got my basis from, and started kind of dabbling in college with cooking and baking, just really as a hobby.
That's where I started cooking, was in college.
I decided that I didn't want to subsist completely off of ramen, so I decided to put in the energy to learn how to cook. That started translating to more, not ornate, but definitely big time meals. I really started getting into the nitty gritty of it.
It happens.
Yeah, went down the rabbit hole, and that
learned all the French words.
Oh, absolutely. All the mise en place, the mother sauces, all that stuff. I was fully into it, and that eventually led into sweets and baking. And I guess it was the approach of the kind of the scientific approach of it to cooking. I was in.
Baking is a little different than cookies. I can do cooking. Baking I struggle with because there's more. I know there's art involved in both of them, but to me baking is a lot of art. I guess it would trend more towards art than it would science too, but there's still plenty of science in there. But it requires a lot of patience, a lot of trial and error, where cooking, even if I mess something up, it's still edible.
Yeah, you usually can adapt, throw a little bit of salt in there, throw a little bit of sugar, do something to balance it out, or you can just throw in another ingredient and end up in a completely different location, but you got a great meal.
Yeah.
So
baking does not work that way.
Baking, yeah, you can have little accidents in baking, but most of the time you need to have a pretty firm foundation with the recipe that you're going for, because it's so based off of specific ratios and chemical reactions and biological reactions for like bread specifically. If you're working, it's an actual living thing up to the point to when you cook it.
Yes.
So you have all these variables and everything to it. So it adds just a new layer of challenges and things that you have to be tapped into when you're actually dealing with it.
Temperature matters. The first thing I had to learn was that room temperature butter is a thing. You can't just pull stuff out of the fridge. You got to have your eggs warm. You got to have all that kind of stuff. And
everything.
I got decent. I made a few loaves. One of them rose beautifully, and then right at the very end just went. But
it's a lot of trial and error too,
so
and
much.
You have to be you kind of have to be aware and listen every single time you go at it, because there are so many variables that you have to take into account and be aware of when you're baking, and you actually have to be able to adapt to it, because like you can come with the same base recipe every single time, but that day the water temperature may be a little bit higher, the humidity in the air could be a little bit higher. All this stuff can have minor differences that can add up and completely change the final product. So you definitely have to bring your A game every time you're doing it.
It requires patience. Cooking does too, but with baking I don't have a ton of patience, and that's probably why I've had a bad go of it. But if you take the time to make sure your ingredients are the right temperature, account for everything, then that just absolutely makes the difference.
It really does.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention where we're set up and shooting today. So we're at the coffee bar in downtown Gadsden. Very thankful for them for letting us use their facility today, and all the wonderful decorations behind me. Didn't even know Bob Dylan played bass. known for a lot of things, didn't know him for that. But great location here. I stopped by this morning, grabbed some coffee as well on my way out and about in town. Very thankful for them for letting us set up here. So did want to slide that in there as well.
Absolutely. This place is awesome.
It is. I come here a lot. Everybody's super friendly, and same thing, the menu changes quite a bit. They have a bunch of interesting stuff up there, so I want to be surprised because I'm kind of basic when it comes to coffee. I like just regular plain black coffee. I want to taste the roast. I want to taste the artistry that's in that, but surprise me. So
Absolutely.
One of the other coffee shops in town, they have one named the Mill Pond. They have a drink named the Mill Pond, so I have to grab that every time I'm out there. Hebrews, if you're ever out in Hooks Bluff, go try the Mill Pond.
That sounds interesting.
I like that. I like every business having kind of their signature product. Like, here's what we're known for. Here's what we do that's different than everybody else. And that's always fun.
It is, yep.
And everything I'm seeing here, this is absolutely artwork that you're making. So seeing some of your examples online, and I know I'm going to butcher the name, but is it rugelach?
Rugelach, yes.
Okay.
And that's been one of my favorite items for a long time. Actually, that's a particular item that really kind of encapsulates, I guess, a kind of goal that I have with baking. And it's definitely, I try to find items that you're not otherwise going to find in Gadsden, Alabama. Different combinations of ingredients that you may not have heard of or be familiar with. And rugelach was one of those first items, I guess a global dessert, that really brought me in. And it really is. A lot of these items are creative expressions. They're a type of language in their own, honestly, to be able to connect and communicate with other people and everything.
So much of our culture centers around food, and so it's great to be able to introduce items, like you said, that we're not familiar with in our area. I know everything from ingredients, different flavors, textures, and things. Circling back to rugelach a little bit, what sets it apart from anything else that we would see out there? I guess kind of give us a description for people that might not be familiar.
Well, it lives in an interesting space where it's in between kind of a pastry and a cookie. That's one of the things that really kind of intrigues me about it. It's a type of pie dough, but you roll it up and kind of treat it and cook it as like a cookie. They typically have like a nut or a fruit filling. Apricot is a very popular type of filling that you see it. How I'm familiar with it is it definitely has a lot of roots to the Central Asia region. Israel is they have their actual own like regionality types of rugelach as well. Where it's actually made almost like a laminated dough, and so it gets really, really flaky. And then you have another type of version of it from like Eastern European Jews in Poland and different Eastern European area, that whole like little area, and they're cut differently, the texture's different, but it still has that same type of like root commonality and everything. It's just interesting to see those little twists and everything on it.
That reminds me of one dish I got introduced to in upstate New York. It's called javape. So the same deal. It goes from Turkey all the way down kind of the Eastern Adriatic. So everywhere, the place that I was eating at was a Bosnian place, and I was working with a Bosnian guy that took me to the restaurant. And so when I got home, I said, man, I got to make this again. What's in this? How do I do this? And I realized so much of those cultures were very akin to ours, because really they're essentially rolled little sausages made of hamburger meat. But you can mix veal in there, you can mix lamb, a few other things, depending on the culture. It was basically the same thing, but some of the sauces that went with it might be different based on different areas. But from Turkey all the way down, that's covering a lot of geography over there. But seeing, kind of the basis of it was the same, but then maybe the trappings of it were a little bit different. So, again, stuff you're never going to find around here, but it feels great when you can take something from around the world, bring it right back here to home, and share it with others.
I guess one of my draws to cooking and baking in general is kind of like a common language, a common communication that you can have people, almost like music and everything. It doesn't matter what your background or understanding and belief, any of that. It does. Food is the common way to be able to talk to people. Music is the common way to be able to talk to people. That's one of the big draws for me, and being able to draw inspiration from these different areas, these different regionalities, these cuisines and everything, and then being able to attempt my version of it, or even attempt a version with maybe local ingredients, so it has a different type of, like, it's a new creation or a hybrid and everything, and you can see the common roots, but then I give it another type of, like, anchor to a specific area and everything like that. So that's one thing that I kind of try to do. Like, you know, I've had someone that stopped by before, and you know, they've told me on a specific item. I change my menu so often that it's honestly kind of hard to remember, but they told me, it's like, this is something that I have not had at all since being in the Philippines, and of all places I tried your version of it in Gadsden, Alabama. I love that. I think that's awesome and everything like that.
It is. Your recipe, it's I get fed up a lot of times with food TV because they're like, oh, you got to go get these ingredients from these very special places to make the essence of the dish. And I'm like, well, that's not really it. Like Italian food, I didn't know for the longest time that tomatoes were never native to Italy. They were brought back there on Columbus's first voyage, and they didn't even look like we would know tomatoes now. So by doing an American version of, say, spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce, you are putting that local spin. If you're using tomatoes that came out of the garden, that is the unique flavor. You're anchoring it to your area. And so I do that a lot in my own cooking. I like Mexican food, I like Italian food a lot. Those are kind of two of the ones I operate on, but putting that local twist on there, finding those local ingredients or substitutions, like Thai cooking. There's one, it's kind of hard to find lemongrass around here, but you can mix arugula and a little bit of lime juice and it gets pretty close. And so it gives it that unique spin. So I can find arugula around here, I can find obviously lemon and lime, but having that local twist on it matters.
Yeah, it's between that, and also part of it is, as you pointed out, a type of creative expression. Baking definitely fills that role and everything, but for me, it's even more about community building. I think, you know, in my mind, a bakery. I guess this is a bit of nostalgia too. Is like you think of it as kind of a cornerstone of, you know, a community, a watering hole, a place for the people to gather. And
breaking bread.
And that's pretty much been kind of like a driving ideal for me and everything like that with baking from the start and everything, building that community.
I think that's important. I think that's something that's kind of missing, especially after the past couple of years. We've kind of holed off into our own, or we've gone off on the internet and found these other things just to take on as hobbies. And I think a lot of it too, we're doing it kind of in our own bubble, and then doing it with a community focus or a community basis, it allows it to be shared a lot easier.
Very much so.
Yep. And I know you actually, we've had this conversation before about the different ingredients that you use, the different types of flours. You're very specific about that, and I know it's hard to get them sometimes, but
it is. Well, that's another thing that I try to put an emphasis on is sourcing locally as much as I possibly can. You know, not only am I trying to build and foster community here, one of the best ways to do that is to, you know, actually patron the businesses that you can source your materials from, or, you know, at least sourcing the items. Like I get flour or sugar, items like that from distributors within the state, growers within the state. So that's a big thing for me. I try to do as much of it locally as I can, and then a focus on the overall quality of the ingredients. I don't really want to cut corners there. You can make a lot of really good, nutritious items with very few ingredients. So if you're not using a whole lot of things going into it, I just don't see a point in not using like the best of that item to be able to do it.
I'm kind of the same way too, and I like that quality matters, because here you have a chance to actually get in a vehicle, drive, and go see the product. I know it's somewhere north of Coleman. There's a lot of wheat fields up there, which you don't really typically think about Alabama growing wheat. Here it's, you know, cotton, soybeans, maybe a little bit of corn, but northwest Alabama, they grow a lot of wheat and barley. A friend of mine owns a malt house that's up in Coleman, and so he buys from local people just the same. He makes it for whiskey and for beer production, but finding local barley and local wheat, he actually does the roasting and the malting himself, so he's buying strictly from local farmers, doing what he's doing, just keeping everything as Alabama as possible.
That's amazing. Yeah, I like that kind of built up small network like that. That's the right way. Down the road, perfect scenario for me, I would want to, even mill my own flour in-house, all of that. Source it from the state, mill it in-house, be able to even sell it to the local area and everything like that as well.
I like that devolution, or instead of buying from mega corporations, we're buying from everything local, because you're doing it the right way. You're establishing a local market, and then you're saying, hey, there's demand here. Other people want this stuff. And then you go out and say, well, what do I need to do to control supply lines for your business? So that way, you're right, buying from local growers, being able to mill your own. You've been up in Cades Cove and Pigeon Forge, right?
Absolutely.
You go to the grist mill out there, and I mean, it's as fresh as it gets.
Absolutely.
Just right there.
Not only that, but like I still want that level of connection between where my sources are. I want to actually know the person that's growing the items. I want to be able to talk to them. I want to know that the quality and care that they're putting into it. I think that's important. If it's just another mega agriculture grower and everything like that, you lose a lot from that. Not only that connection, but honestly, the quality of the ingredients and everything like that. You're not getting the full nutritional value from it. You're not getting the full type of quality control from it. It's just not ideal.
I agree. When I was a kid, we ate, of course, tons of vegetables, but I didn't get older. As I got older, I realized the significance of it, where a lot of the corn we ate came from Anderson Road. We would go out on Anderson Road and pick it. We went out on Appalachian Highway. Some friends of ours had a corn patch out there. We would go pick the corn, shuck it, everything. My dad went and got a truck bed full one day, processed it, put it up. Some of it got creamed, some of it got left on the cob, but then we would freeze it, and we ate on that forever. And so that's a little bit atypical of how people kind of my age grew up, but having that connection to the land, I had hands on that stuff. I'd picked it out of the field myself. Nothing tasted better than corn that I'd picked myself and sweated and knocked the worms off and all that kind of stuff.
The connection that you have to the actual work and toil with the food is big.
It is.
Big. It makes all the difference. It really does.
It just tastes better. Plus, that was heirloom variety. That was a Silver Queen corn. And, corn, beans, whatever it was, we picked and put that up. That's the way they did. They preserved things back in those days. And a lot of those methods are lost, but a lot of them are not. So I found myself going and buying a canning rig, reading online, how do I can, how do I preserve things, buying jars, buying all that kind of stuff, pressure canning. So just learning those old techniques, it was great, because that does, when you have much more say-so in your food, it gives you that connection. The same as if you pulled it out of the ground, but you've got some sweat in the game.
Well, that's actually one thing that I want to try to encourage with the people that come by my business and shop with me is a curiosity and where their food's coming from, and actual the processes and everything going into it. Even something with like sourdough bread, it's not necessarily a lost art, but it's definitely not as widespread as what it once was. I mean, that was the standard way to make bread, but now it's pretty much Wonder Bread.
Yeah.
So, but some of the techniques, the process and everything, when people actually start looking into the history of their food and everything, that's one thing that I actually try to encourage. And when people come by, a lot of times conversations are started up on that. They'll see items or they'll see a technique, and it's something that harkens back to like an older time and everything. So that gives them, I can give them like a little bit of a history lesson as well and everything. Maybe spur that curiosity to dig in a little bit further and everything, and maybe explore their own type of curiosity when it comes to food.
And a lot of it, education, I think, is important about it. Just telling people, finding a way to make it sound interesting to them, and it's what you're putting into your body. You need to know where this stuff comes from. You need to know the care that was put into it. It's like the old saying in a restaurant: you don't mess with the cooks, because they're the ones controlling your food. So you always want to treat them very kindly. So I know you set up at a lot of markets. How do people get in touch with you? How do people shop with you, find out everything that you produce?
The easiest way to get in touch with me is to reach out on my website, brownhatbakeryllc.com. It's a small website that I run myself on there. I have a full menu that they can browse through, see some of the staple items that I run through, kind of my calling card items, specialties. They can also place custom inquiries as well.
So if something's not on the menu, but childhood recipe or something that they want to try, you're open to it.
Absolutely. That's one of the things. I've actually had a few orders, a specific item, or I've had people bring me ingredients and say, hey, could you be able to adapt and make something like this?
This is from the fig tree in my backyard. What could you do with this?
Yeah, I love little challenges like that. So I can do custom orders. My menu changes quite often. A lot of the markets that I do, I usually do a split between about half of kind of my staple items that I'm known for, and then about half new items. Every market, every week, every time I do it, I try to do something new. Usually what's in season at the moment, or things that just sound interesting. I think I kind of get bored a little bit if I just do the same thing all the time. But again, it kind of harkens back to, I want people to be able to try new things, new combinations, maybe things that they haven't thought would be paired together before. So,
like on one of my previous episodes, it was habanero pepper jelly.
Oh yeah,
combined with brie cheese and a cracker, and I'm like, that's an interesting combination.
Get the sweet,
Peach
the spicy, all that and everything. You get the creaminess. Yeah, that's a good combo. Also do a lot of local markets in the Etowah County area. Mostly farmers markets currently. I also do various events that they have in the Etowah County as well. Different. Usually they're themed, so fall festivals, you'll be seeing them roll out in the next couple months. Winter
Pumpkin
festivals,
spice,
all that. 4th of July. I had a very busy summer, hopping around all over the place. So those are the best ways to be able to find me right now. I'm still kind of building up the presence and everything like that.
Yeah, I understand
at this time. So, but the markets has been probably one of the most consistent ways. I like to be front facing and actually be able to have like the connection with the customers and everything.
I like that too. The website's nice, and the website's helpful because people can find you, and because some people use that method to find, but there's no replacement for face to face. It's nice, and I spend a lot of time at the markets and talking to people. Just I'm interested. What's your story? How did you arrive here? Yeah. Where are you going?
And you can definitely build out a full digital business, and I've actually seen over like the past 2 or 3 years, fully online ran bakeries are pretty successful. There's a demand for them, but it's hard to replace the actual interaction. I want to actually know what the customers are wanting, the type of items that they're looking for, what they like, what they don't like, all that stuff. And it's kind of hard to replace that if it's only digital. So
yeah, absolutely. So while I've still got you, what's an example of something that a customer suggested a recipe to you? What was it, and how did it turn out? And
it was ube, which I've seen. It's actually kind of been a trendy item for a little while, but it came on my radar, and they had noticed some of the other kind of eclectic items that I had, and the conversation came up, and they were talking to me about ube. It piqued my interest, and in a later date, they had actually brought me some ube. It's kind of like a milled powder for it and everything. So ube, it's kind of like a purple sweet potato. I don't know if you've seen those before.
Yes, the international market. I've seen them there.
It's got a kind of like a natural vanilla, almost coconutty type of flavor to it. It's a bit sweet, but it does. It's got a good flavor to it.
I've tried one, yes.
I'd never had it. I'd seen it. My interest had been piqued by the color of it, obviously,
Yeah, it's
before.
a deep purple.
But this person was so kind enough to bring me this. I was like, absolutely. And so I made this batch of items and tried it out, and then adapted a recipe from that. So
very interesting. Always good to hear something new, something different. Because I do like some of those food shows where I think it was at Iron Chef.
Absolutely.
Where they bring out an ingredient and I'm like, okay, you got to be creative with this. You got to figure out something to do in a very short time period. But
yeah, Iron Chef and just a little aside and everything, but Iron Chef and Chopped are very formidable for me and everything. It may be, and definitely at the time was just fun and entertainment to put it on and watch it. But honestly, the approach to planning out and making an item, and also the improvisation that came with it from both of those, I think they had a long-lasting impact for me on the way that I approach things.
As an aside, when I was in college, the 3 shows that we consistently watched, we watched Alton Brown, whatever he put out, and actually went to college down the street from the Kroger that he shopped at over in Alpharetta, Georgia. So we were down the street, so it was kind of a local back then. Then the other was Iron Chef, the original Japanese, because Alton Brown wasn't on that one back in the day, but the Japanese Iron Chef, and SpongeBob.
Yep.
That's college summed up for you.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
But
yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing everything to us. Thanks for sitting down and talking to me today.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely. Appreciate what you're doing, and keep doing it.
Oh, thank you so much.
All righty.